Now we're going to take a look at 3D in After Effects. And After Effects doesn't actually have 3D like we've seen it in Photoshop and in Dimensions. It's not really true 3D. It's something that we call 2.5D. And I'll illustrate that for you in a minute. So here I have a composition that has some text in it with the solid in the background. What I want to do is I want to look at what we can do with 3D inside of After Effects. So you notice here in these columns that there are several switches and options for layers. And in this particular layer, this text layer, what I want to do is I want to turn on the 3D option for this text to have it move around in the 3D space. So to activate 3D under the cube, I'm going to just check here. And now if I go ahead and expand the transform options for the cube, for the text, you'll see that I have all these options now. So without the cube on, those transformations are only X and Y. And with the cube on, I have X, Y, and Z values. Notice also that I have the familiar arrows that you've seen in other 3D tools. So I have the green arrow for Y, I have the red arrow for X, and I have a blue arrow for Z. And that's pretty consistent with all the other tools. So what can we do here? So we can scale objects on those axes X, Y, and Z. We can orient them on those axes. We can change X, Y, and Z rotation. And when I do that, you'll see that it doesn't really look like 3D. So if I were to manipulate the X value, here you can see it looks like it's flipping up and down and back into space. But notice that the text doesn't have any extrusion. It doesn't have any depth to it. So that's where one clue that it's not real true 3D. If I switch the Y rotation, you can see that this is probably the most useful. I can make things look like it's swinging and spinning in 3D space. And you see that it kind of goes down into the distance. And with the Z rotation, it's not going to look like anything other than normal rotation, because on the Z-axis I can spin out on the rotation, but it's just like a regular rotation. Where Z comes into play is position. So if I were to zoom out, or actually what I'm doing is I'm just changing the position on the Z-axis. Looks like the text is going away from us or it's coming towards us, and that could be useful. But you could also do that with the scale option as well. So that's general 3D in After Effects, but with 3D layers, you have the ability to create 3D cameras and 3D lighting too. So if I go up to the layer menu down to new, I can create a new camera, and there are different camera settings here. I'm choosing the 35 millimeter preset. There are other presets that you can choose from as well. I'm just going to go ahead and click OK on that. And you need 3D to enable cameras and lights. So I'm going to go up to the layer menu down to new, and I'm going to go to light to create a 3D light, and I'm just going to accept the default. This is a point light with an intensity of 125%, and cast shadows is on, and I'll go ahead and click OK on that. And you can see a little bit of what that light looks like. The light has three-dimensional properties, so here's my arrows again, so I can move the light. Oops, I can move that light by, I should be able to move the light by selecting those values, and I can move the light up and down. I can move it on its x-axis, and I can move it on the z-axis if I wanted to as well. And one thing I want to show you here is that everything right now is on a flat plane. So even though it's 3D, everything's all stuck together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a new solid, and that new solid I'm going to make white, and that's going to cover everything up. I'm going to turn this into a 3D object. Notice that the light affects that 3D object once I enable the 3D options. I'm going to move that down below the text, and right now everything is, like I said, is flat on the same plane. So what I'm going to do is create some separation between this white object and the text. So to do that, I'm going to go to the camera. I'm going to choose the left camera, and you can see all of the different objects. They're all stacked right here in the middle. This triangular shape that you're looking at is the camera. So this is the camera focal angle. This little star shape is the light. So the light's kind of sitting in between the camera and the actual objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have the white solid selected, and you can see that the Z arrows here. I'm going to push this back into space, and then I'm going to go back to change the view to the active camera, and you'll see that it looks like the white object got smaller when in fact it just got moved in distance wise back into space. Now, even though the shadows were set to be on in the light, I'm not seeing any of the shadows, and the reason for that is that if you go into the actual text layer, what we want to look at is the material options, and the material options you'll see here cast shadows is set to off. I'll just turn that on, and now I can actually see the shadows appearing. So you can do some interesting things with this. First thing I want to do is I want to change the scale of the white solid. So with the white solid selected, I'm going to hit S on the keyboard. That'll bring up my scale options, and I'm just going to scale that up pretty big. And then what I can do here is I can animate the light. Since that light is an animatable object, I'm going to hit P on the keyboard to bring up the position property. What I'm going to do is change the lighting position all the way over here to the left, and I'll set a keyframe for that. And then I'll move the timeline over maybe to 2 seconds, and I'll take that X and I'll drag it over to the right to create this type of effect. And then we want to easy ease those keyframes, so I'm going to select both keyframes and hit F9 on the keyboard, and that will set them to easy ease. And then if I go ahead and play through the animation, you'll see the type of effect that we can get. That gives it some kind of depth and some kind of shadow that's going on with the light itself. And the camera that's being animated right now is that active camera. So you see that happening here. And that looks a little bit better right there. So that's the basics of 3D and After Effects. There's some other things that you can do with the 3D. Like I said, those spin options are really, really good, but it's not true 3D. That's the point that I'm trying to hit home here. It's not true 3D. It's 2.5D. So next we're going to take a look at Cinema 4D Light, which comes with After Effects, and how those two tools work together.